Welcome to the HU Movemakers podcast, where we highlight folks that are blazing the trail and making moves in Howard culture. All right, welcome to the HU Movemaker podcast, where we highlight Howard folks that are making moves and blazing the trail in society, man. Today we got a very, very special guest, a veteran, 20-year veteran in the editorial space. She's been doing her thing, man, since 99 when we came on Howard's campus together, fighting a good fight. NYU graduate. Man, she can bake. She can do Beyoncé. You can find her work in Reader's Digest, Ebony, Fast Company, Redbook. Her pen is so deadly that it's being translated in 21 languages. She got 5 books, if I'm reading that correctly. But the ones that we're gonna get into are, How We Fight White Supremacy, a field guide to Black resistance. Another one, Anti-Racist, Powerful Voices, Inspiring Ideas. New York Times, Huffington Post, ThinkProgress, award-winning author, Kenrya Rankin, all the way from Cleveland, Ohio, Delta Sigma Theta Alpha Chapter. We got to get that in, because if I don't bring that up, you know how the Deltas are. They like the beehive. I get jumped on. So anyway, Kenrya, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you on the show. We get to talk about a topic that's, right in our face, but even more so than that, man, we get to talk about you and your career. First question, man. I said your pen is deadly. 21 languages. What does it mean to be like, yo, I can reach this many people just with my thoughts and putting it on paper, and it's so deadly that somebody took it upon themselves to put my stuff in 21 languages. What does that mean when I say that?
It's funny because I never really thought about it like that before. Really? It's in 21 languages. Yeah, because I've written for so many magazines and they're international, and I don't know. It's pretty cool, I guess, that there are people whose worlds and whose lived experiences are completely different from mine, but they're still able to find some common point of reference in the work that I do. That's pretty dope.
That's crazy, man, to think that it resonates with people who don't even speak our language, don't even really know our culture, but it's still something that's important to them. Yeah. So you're somebody that, we came into Howard together, we graduated together. I wouldn't describe you as like a loud person, right?
Nope.
I don't know if I would say shy, but I wouldn't, you're not like, I guess like life of the party, but
I'm very laid back.
Yeah, laid back. Yeah. So where does this, I don't know, is it like when you start writing, is it like do you transform into like something else? Like what happens when you get in that booth?
Well, I think first, it's like you said, it's not really shyness. I think it's that I always really aim to get at the truth of a matter. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten more comfortable being really rooted in that. And that writing is the easiest way for me to do it. I mean, I do a lot of interviews and things like this, and this stuff is always tough for me. I have anxiety. I don't like doing anything where I got to be recorded and I wonder about how it's going to go. It's just funny because I'm a co-host of a podcast, but I can edit that, right? It's a little different. I don't know. I think it's just, I learned really young that there is power. In fact, I was in this writing group in Cleveland called Power of the Pen, and they would give us these writing prompts. I was always a nerd. And we would have to write about different topics. I think I started doing that in like 8th grade. And it was this kind of probably practice for this, where you get a topic and you have to put real research and thought, but in a very short period of time, and figure out the best way to reach people and the best way to tell a story. And I think that that's just what I've always done. And it allows me to do it in a way that feels safe to me. Like when I am behind my laptop, I am rooted. I'm grounded. I know what I'm doing. I know my way around. It's just the very best way for me to express myself. And so while I may not be the one who's front and center, I've always been the one who's kind of, I don't want to make myself sound like an evil genius, but it's always been that I've been using my pen to make things happen. So like even at Howard, I was chief of staff for HUSA, Howard University Student Association. That's not a flashy position. You're not president, you're not vice president, but you're the one who helps to get them in there. You create the policy, you write the speeches, you write the
Wow.
promotional materials, you do all of that stuff. And so it's always been who I was, and writing has always been the way that I've done this. You just didn't always know it.
Now, when you were younger, growing up in Cleveland, did you see? I'm sure you probably saw yourself as a writer, but did you know like what type of writing
No.
you were gonna do?
So it was interesting. When I was in the 8th grade, I had to take one of those, career assessment things, like in my home ec class, where you had to answer all these questions and they would like spit out what you should be, what your career should be. And it told me that I should either be a public relations specialist or an urban planner.
Hmm.
So, being the person who I was, I looked those up and I was like, PR sounds interesting. And so I dedicated my life to PR. I started doing internships. I had my first internship the summer before my 11th grade year or something like that. And so then when I came to Howard, my degree was in journalism and my specialization was in PR. And I just knew that that was what I was going to do. I interned throughout the school year. I interned every summer. And then I got to my junior year and I realized I was bored, that I didn't feel like I had a real creative outlet, even though I was writing every day. That, basically once I had learned to write one press release, I had learned to write a million press releases and I didn't really feel challenged. But I had always had this idea when I was a kid that I wanted to start a magazine for Black girls, but it was always something that I saw myself doing way, way, way down the line. I don't know why. Maybe I just didn't really feel empowered, but it never seemed like the kind of thing that I could do right away. But once I got to junior year and realized I didn't want to do PR anymore, I was like, well, why not magazines? And so I did like a full pivot of my coursework and my career junior year at Howard. And that's how I ended up writing for magazines and then later moving into the digital space and writing books, which was something that was kind of like a bucket list item, but again, felt like a thing that was really far off into the distance. And now I'm 5 books in and I'm writing 6 and 7 right now.
Let's transition this. You watch that show, Dear White People?
I did, yeah.
Yo, that's crazy. That show is crazy. So, all right, and I asked that just because we about to transition. So I know you got. I told you I want to talk about 2 books. So the one is How We Fight White Supremacy.
Yeah.
And first question is, what makes you qualified to write such a book?
Well, I think that the best way to start that answer is to talk about what the book is and what it isn't.
Because that's a long
So
way away from Uptown Magazine.
it is a lot.
That ain't Uptown Magazine, all right? You know what I'm saying? And
Which is a place where I worked. I was the DC face of Uptown Magazine for a couple of years, actually. Um, that's a really good question. So first, I'll tell you about what the book is.
mm-hmm.
It is a curated collection of a lot of different things from a lot of different Black thinkers. So, I had the idea. I was in my car and I was listening to a podcast because I love podcasts. And I was thinking about this Walt Whitman poem. It's Lisa Grass, and he says, "Do I contradict myself? Of course I do. I contain multitudes." And I used to use that quote to describe how I could like dance on tables at Dream on Saturday and then be in chapel on Sunday, right? I contain multitudes. I'm not just one thing. None of us are.
That's real.
Yeah. And then I like extrapolated that to Black people. Like, we're not a monolith. As much as people want to paint us all with the same brush and say that, oh, well, my Black friend likes this, and so this is what all Black people want. That's not us. And I started to think about the fact that as many Black people as there are that at least that many ways for us to resist the creep of white supremacy. And so the book is really a celebration and a collection of the ways that white supremacy touches our lives, but more importantly, the ways that we fight back. And so it's not prescriptive so much as it's descriptive, right? So it's not how to fight white supremacy. Because if we knew how to do it on a grand scale, like if there was some button that we could just lean on, and we would have leaned on that bitch a long time ago. It's more like, how are we fighting? And the hope is that by the time someone finishes the book, they've identified the ways that they can best fight. Because I really believe that it's a collective movement. It's a thing that we all have to find our own way in order to move the ball forward. So,
Man,
what makes me qualified, I guess, is just being a Black person who writes and who thinks and who has an experience in white supremacy, just like all of us, right? Like, there, when I talk about white supremacy very often, especially when I first started this, people kind of cringed from the term. Like, nobody really wanted to say it or think about it. And it's crazy because a year and a half later, you hear it constantly. But when this book came out in March, and when I sold it, March of 2019, and when I sold it the previous year, one of the sticking points for me and my co-author was that we had to keep white supremacy in the title. Like, we were so concerned that publishers would be so afraid of that phrase that they would want us to change the name of the book. And it was one of our like non-negotiables when we were negotiating the contract in terms of what had to be in the book. But I learned to call a spade, right? So my daddy was a Black nationalist. These are conversations that I've been having since I was a kid. And so I feel like everything that I've gone through led me to the point of being able to pull together this kind of book.
George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Trayvon Martin, I would say up until March, really, and then this pandemic hit, and now everybody's sitting at home, and then you have these things with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd happen, and people are forced to watch these things and deal with these things. But this is something that you was on 2 years ago, and writing about it. Was it something that happened to you, or maybe somebody came to you and said, "Man, we really need to discuss this, and this needs to be talked about more than just like a footnote on CNN or something"?
Well, no. Honestly, it's just an outgrowth of my work. So, and my passions. So, I first started like in How We Fight White Supremacy. I write like 10 different essays, and they touch on like, various aspects, because these are the chapters lifts up ways that we fight. So like there's a chapter on humor and the way that we use it to fight. There's a chapter on love and why it's important to us. There's a chapter on children and the way that they fight. And so in one of the chapter on children, actually, I write about my like activist origins, and a lot of it started with my dad, and I started joining organizations by high school. I worked on the executive team of the NAACP Howard chapter, worked with Urban League, and so a lot of these things are just an outgrowth of the work that I've been doing. But once I got into magazines and like content creation in general, what I very quickly realized outside of Howard is that it's a very white industry. On a lot of staffs, I would be one of only one or two Black editors. And so I didn't really get a chance to do that kind of work. I would have my activist self over here who was advocating for the rights and the freedoms of Black people. And I would have my work over here while I was writing about, the best exercise to do if your back hurt and all of these things that I did at women's magazines. Yeah. And then I kind of divested. I got laid off from a magazine I was working at during the recession. We call it the Great Recession in 2008. I was at Latina magazine, and I got laid off.
Yeah, I saw that. I wanted to ask you, are you Latina?
No.
Man, it just
And
goes
I
to
was
show
one
you
of
how much of a business everything is. They just need a
yeah,
great
no.
writer.
They just wanted somebody who could do the job, honestly. And I was one of only 2 or 3 people on the staff who considered themselves Black, even though there were a lot of people as brown as I was. It was an eye-opening experience. But so when I got laid off, I was interviewing and realized I didn't really want a job. And so I decided to pivot to full-time editorial consultancy at that time. And one of the gigs that came across my plate was working at Color Lines, which is, it started as a magazine 22 years ago. Wow. But it's run by a nonprofit called Race Forward. And I was asked to come on as a freelance editor, which then turned into me eventually running the site up until a couple of months ago. So I was there for 4 years. And so what's significant about that is that it's the first place where I got to bring together my activist self and my writer self and my editor
So did you
self.
feel like liberated kind of?
I did. Yeah, it was wonderful to be working under a nonprofit model, because working for content companies, you're on this page view situation that turns into a dog chasing its tail, right? Oh, these are the articles that people click on, so this is what you need to be writing about. And it turns into this cycle where you're doing the same stuff over and over again, because that's what the data is telling you that people want. And it can compromise the editorial, quite honestly. And so being able to work in a situation where you're literally just doing the work that the people who you serve really want, and it's not just dictated by numbers, because we were served basically by grants and support from the nonprofit. So it allowed us to really focus on the work and the activism behind it. And so in doing that work, every day I was assigning and writing and editing stories about Black people being killed, literally every day at one point. Like that summer of 2014, when we were losing everybody, that was my daily reality. And so while there are a lot of people who I think have finally come into the movement over the last few months, what I know just from being a student of movements and from doing the work that I did is that this is not new. Black people have been being killed by police for a very long time. Black people have been being killed by state-sanctioned violence for a very long time. This is not new. It is not new that we've been in the streets and risking our lives to fight. It is just the next iteration. But what I think is different right now is that people are raw. We've been in our houses, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, since March. And what we've been seeing is yet another manifestation of the fact that this government doesn't give a fuck about us. That while we are being disproportionately killed by the coronavirus, the government is willfully doing everything it can to keep us from being able to be safe on every front, and that it impacts us more than it impacts everyone else. But the data is there that shows that. And when you add that insult, that injury, on top of that insult and that injury that comes with seeing someone kneel on the neck of a Black man for almost 9 minutes, when you find out that police ran up in a woman's home and killed her for literally no reason, you get to a breaking point. And I think that's why we've been flooding the streets.
I think for me, man, and those are good points. I remember following that Trayvon Martin case. And even if we just rewind it back to Rodney King, when we think about what happened with Rodney King, that was caught on video before everybody had a video camera. Mm-hmm. So I remember thinking in my head, like, in order for this to get caught on video, this dude probably had to stop, put batteries in the camera. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Make sure a tape was in there. Like, and then press play, find a focus, and then zoom all the way in, make sure you had a good picture. And then all before even it was captured on video for us, and they still got off innocent. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, and that's just what was on video. So then and that was when we were like in 8th grade or something like that. But when you fast forward to like Trayvon Martin, I remember following this case, because at this point, the Trayvon thing, I think my wife is pregnant, you know what I'm saying, with my first son. So I'm like, you change when you have kids and all of that. Yeah. But following this case, I'm like, how, when you listen to the video, the tape, they saying don't pursue him. You know what I'm saying? And then Trayvon Martin, who's a kid who's 17, who probably does what every man is going to tell their son to do. If somebody fights you, fight back. You know what I'm saying? A grown man, so he loses the fight. He's a neighborhood watch, kills him, gets off. He's able to sell books. He's able to raise millions of dollars. He's able to like sign autograph Skittles. He's able, do all of these things. And it's like a slap in the face. And it makes you feel like, does America, like you said, state sanctioned murders and, like, what is the value that America places on, on Black lives? So your work, fast forward to now, white supremacy. I mean, how do you, like, when you were writing those stories every day, were you taking these things home with you?
Yes. It's really tough. I mean, it's part of why I'm no longer working at Color Lines anymore. You carry it. I mean, I think we all carry it in us, right? Like, I can't talk about George Floyd without getting choked up. I couldn't watch more than the first couple of minutes of that video without stopping because I was crying. And I pray that I never get to the point where I'm jaded, at the sight of violence against my people. I mean, against anybody but God. It is an onslaught. And I mean, there were days, I remember, right around the time when Sandra Bland died, that there were so many cases and there was so much coming in that we would shut down early some days because everyone would be so upset by the news and what we were having to cover every day. And, but one of the books that I'm working on that will come out in 2022 looks at the ways that racism effectively kills Black people and Black women in particular. And one of the things that's really key there is PTSD and allostatic load and the amount of continuous and constant stress that Black people carry around with us every day, just by virtue of the fact that we are existing in this space. Black women carry a higher allostatic load than any other group in this entire country.
I've never heard of that. What is that?
Sure. An allostatic load is the cost of carrying constant and consistent and cumulative stress in your body and the way that it impacts your body. It's essentially a stress load. And Black women carry a higher stress load, allostatic load than anyone else in this country. And that's associated with a lower baseline level of health and makes us more susceptible to a lot of diseases and to then having a higher mortality rate when we do contract those diseases.
This segment is sponsored by www.homecoming@howard.com. Whether events, notification, or apparel, we are your one-stop shop for the ultimate alumni and friends homecoming experience. I mean, Black women, it's like y'all so needed, but like underappreciated. And I feel and not just by white culture, but even by people like myself, Black men. Because you look at hip hop videos, you look at domestic violence. I mean, you look at a lot of stuff, but you can't do nothing without a Black woman. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really can't do anything. Why? Like,
why? Well, I think there's a lot of different things that go into it. One of the ways that I sometimes explain it is to explain white supremacy. So, first of all, when I say white supremacy, I'm talking about an economic, social, and political system that thrives on the subjugation of people who are not white. And another way that I describe it is a hierarchical ladder. So at the very top of that ladder sits a wealthy, Christian, cisgender, able-bodied, straight, moneyed, educated white man. He enjoys the bulk of the privilege in not just American culture, but everywhere, let's be clear. And so everyone else gets slotted somewhere else in that hierarchy. So if they're sitting on the top rung of the ladder, you got a white woman who enjoys all of those things except for the fact that she is not considered to be a man. And then you have, other races, you have people with different levels of disability, you have people with different gender identities, sexual orientations, all of these things. And somewhere down there is the Black woman. So of course, white people, right? Everybody that's down below that, for those who willfully subscribe to white supremacy in that they thrive on the privilege that they get and don't want to give it up. The way that they stay up at the top is that every time somebody tries to reach up for the next rung, they step on their feet, they kick them down, right? So this is why 53% of white women voted with their whiteness for 45 instead of voting for someone, a woman, a white woman who is them, because they see themselves as being, the more you can kick other people down the ladder, they think that they can get closer to the top, because fundamentally people have been taught to thrive on hierarchy, to want to be better than other people or be viewed as better than other people. Well, you also got Black men on that hierarchical ladder, and y'all get to sit on a rung above us. Same thing goes. You aspire, not you personally, but Black men aspire to climb up the ladder just like everybody else does. And that oftentimes means fucking with us. And it's not just, cisgender, because I enjoy privilege by being a cis, Black woman, but then our trans Black women are
You said
my
a
sisters.
cis? What's a cis?
Oh, so cisgender means that you identify, and it's CISGNDR. So if you're cisgender, it means that you identify with the same gender that you were assigned at birth, versus transgender, which is someone whose identity is different from the one that they were assigned at birth. So I enjoy privilege because
Oh,
I was assigned female at birth, and that's how I identify. But my
got you.
trans sisters who don't have that privilege are subjected to even more harm from people who sit above them on a ladder, right?
Mhm.
Including cis Black women who are trying to defend themselves and their place on the hierarchy. And the shit travels downhill. And we've all been situated down. And I think fundamentally, when you look at it as a hierarchy where everybody is trying to claw their way to the top, they stepping on the heads of other people to try to get there.
So is
And
it just
so
a white
we get fucked
supremacy
up.
thing, or is it just, or is it more than, or is it deeper than that?
Right. So that's the other part of it, right? White supremacy is a system. It's an entire structure. And so within it is racism, right? That's the part that we always hear about and the part that we always think about. But there's ableism, there's homophobia, there's xenophobia, which we've seen used to great effect by this administration. All of those things are like an interlocking support for white supremacy. And it holds it up because it puts the people who are most privileged at the top. It holds them up there to
So
think that
did you always have this mindset, or did you evolve into this?
lives are more important than property. Yes.
Just the whole idea of like privilege, and like, was this something that what you were
Yeah.
always?
No, I think I've definitely evolved. And I mean, I hope that I'm always changing, and I hope that we're always changing, that as we read and we're exposed to more things and we meet more people, that we're able to widen our scope and be able to understand our place, and the privilege that we have and what our duty is to use it. And I can absolutely say that I've grown, that I know so much more than I knew a month ago, 3 months ago, a year ago, and that I'm constantly evolving my analysis in order to make sure that I'm bringing as many folks into it as possible.
Got you.
Yeah.
Oh, Barack Obama. I mean, do you feel like he advanced Black people? I mean, it could be an unfair question, but I mean, 40, 50 years from now, when we telling our grandkids or whatever about Obama, are we gonna be like, man, that brother really, without him, we wouldn't have been able to do, you know.
Uh, it is a tough question. And so I actually had this conversation with my daughter not too long ago. We were talking about how
That's that Northeast. Where you at in DC? No, I'm just playing.
so I was actually having this conversation with my daughter a few weeks ago, and we were talking about how 2 things, 3 things, 4 things can be true. how it can be true that Barack Obama is the first Black president. It can be true that we were truly excited to get this Black man into office. It can be true that a lot of Black people did a lot of work and a lot of praying to get him there. It can be true that he pushed some policies that were positive for us, that he fought for healthcare for all, even though we got what we got, that the ACA is still better than what we had, right? All of those things can be true. It can also be true that he ordered drone attacks on, innocent people who were just living their lives in another part of the world. And most of us didn't think about it or know about it because it wasn't happening in Chicago and Cleveland and DC and New York. It can be true that while he talked about rising tides lifting all boats, he also said that he is not the Black president, he is the president. And so I have mixed feelings. I also take great pride in the fact that I got to interview him while I was a Latina, and he was fantastic, and it was a wonderful interview. And I, worked on the campaign or volunteered on the campaign, and some of my closest friends were integral in getting him elected. But it doesn't mean that he didn't also enact immigration policy that deported more people back to their home countries than the administration before him, right? It doesn't mean that he is a perfect person or was a perfect president, but it does mean that I supported him while he was in office. And it does mean that he's a damn sight better than the person we have in the White House right now.
It's like, man, I'm only voting for Biden because I hate Trump. That's it. It's not like, man, because I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, why is it that, of all the millions and millions of people in the country, these are the two best people that we can find to represent our interests? And
I don't think they're the two best that we can find. I think they're just the ones we ended up with, right? Because if we think about all the folks who were in play at the beginning of this election cycle, we had some folks that could have maybe really moved the needle, and we didn't support them.
Oh yeah, you're right. When you was laid off, right? You was laid off. You go do your own thing. What's your what you had your daughter then when you were laid off, right?
No, this was before she was born. I was still living in New York.
Man, laid off in New York, that's tough already.
Yeah. Okay. I filed for unemployment.
Okay. So step one, file for unemployment, people.
Yes,
okay.
Because I had no steady income. And then I was like, all right, well, what skills do I have that can support me? And I had always really considered myself to be an editor and not a writer at that point. I like to take other people's stuff and make it better. But what there was a market for was writing. And so I started reaching out to my network and saying, hey, got laid off. I'm working independently. Do you have assignments for me? And so much of it was built off of relationships that I had formed while I was working at magazines, because the people who gave me freelance assignments were people who were already familiar with my work because we worked on staffs before. And just over time like that, like I said, it was the beginning of the Great Recession, or I don't know if you know, hopefully you weren't in this situation because you've always been an entrepreneur, but they kept extending the unemployment insurance because things were going really terribly. And so I got almost like a full year of unemployment. And so that year really gave me a base to be able to build upon, to find as many clients as I could. And so by the time I finished my first year of freelancing, I was earning enough to be able to support myself once unemployment ran out.
Wow.
And so that was really the beginning of it.
So how much does a range? I mean, if somebody wants to be you were an editor, a freelance editor, is that, or a writer?
And writer. Now I'm an editorial consultant, so it means I do a lot of different types of work.
So is that one of those careers that if you're doing it, they say, man, you're not going to get paid for a while, or the money's going to be really low? Were you in that phase?
I think it depends. I definitely was at first. Budgets were low because it was a recession, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely needed that unemployment to be able to live, especially being in an expensive city. I mean, I moved down to DC after a year where I was able to get my expenses down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what a range is. So when I give talks at universities, students very often ask me like, how can I become a freelancer? Can I do this right out of college? And what I always tell them is that so much of it is who you know and the reputation that you've built. So the reason that I was able to start consulting freelancing was that I had worked with so many people who knew the quality of my work, because a lot of folks are not really willing to take a chance on an unknown kid. Like, they don't
Was
want to
that hard though?
assign.
Cashing in on those relationships? Was it hard? Like, what was the turnaround time from being laid off
Yeah,
to getting that first person to believe in you?
probably just a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Honestly, it wasn't, and it wasn't too tough. I mean, probably the hardest part was just having to make myself vulnerable enough to call somebody and say, "Hey, I need some work." But the reality is that I knew I was excellent, so
Oh,
it
you knew you
wasn't.
was great. You
I
knew
knew I was
this.
excellent, so it
Wow.
wasn't like I was asking someone to do me a favor. You know what I mean? Like, I was
The
going to
the
do work for you.
humility, man, the humility. How do you decide how much you're gonna get paid? Because you don't have
It's
much
tough.
leverage in this situation, or do
Not at
you?
first. You don't. No. And a lot of places, especially like magazines and websites, they have a very set amount of money that they will pay you. Um, it's still probably valuing my work is probably one of the toughest things I do. When it comes to books, I have an agent, a literary agent who does that work for me,
Oh,
who,
okay.
yeah, who like they give them amount, she negotiates,
Wow.
she
So you
goes
got an
back and forth.
agent. You got an
I
agent.
do.
Wow.
And I've had an agent for maybe 11 or 12 years.
So when
Um,
you first step out, did you get an agent when you first started?
so she's a literary agent. So I had an idea for my very first book, which is called Start It Up. It's a business guide to help people identify their passion and turn it into their business.
Wow. It's
And
amazing.
yeah, so I got that idea while I was still working at Latina.
Girl, go
And
ahead. Go ahead.
I found an agent directly after I got laid off. And then that agent did not work out, not because she wasn't great, because she was just too busy and not super communicative. And then I got connected with another agent, a Black woman who is fantastic, Tanya McKinnon, and she's still my agent to this day. And so she specifically works on my book projects. And so she helps to, drive the value up as much as possible. She is the one who is responsible for getting me as much money as she can. I think people have an idea that book projects pay a lot of money. They vary so widely. It's interesting. Last month, there was this whole thing where white people were being pushed to post how much money they made on their book deals so that Black people could really understand what the disparity was. And it was shocking, the disparity between what Black people are being paid for their books and what white people are being paid for their books. Like, I always knew that there was something there, but it was insane. Yeah.
So, how much does it cost to write a book? Like,
Oh, that's a really good
I mean,
question.
not even like, we're not saying like, I know it's a range, but let's say I
Mhm.
want to write a book and I want to put it on Amazon, you know, and let's say that I want to write a book with the maybe assistance of somebody that knows how to write. I want to get
Yeah.
an editor. I want to publish it. How much do you think that costs?
Well, it depends, one, on the quality of your writing, because you need more hours from an editor, the more work that it needs. And then I think it just depends on who you connect with. I mean, there are some editors who are probably charging a flat rate of $500, and there are some editors who charge $100 an hour. It depends on who you connect with and who can do the type of work that you want to do. Self-publishing itself, especially if you go with the ebook route, is really inexpensive, which is why it's a great equalizer. It lets so many people into the business and the work of publishing. One of the other things that I do is I'm a co-host and executive producer of a podcast called Eternal, and we do a lot of indie published books on the show because we think it's really important to lift up the work of Black women who are doing it all on their own. And I'm sure a lot of them are literally just paying a few $100s for editing and then putting it up for free. So the
Man.
barrier to entry is really low at this point. I do always recommend that people use an editor though, because it's nice to have another eye that can see things that you don't necessarily see with your work.
So, okay, so you have your book, and let's say your book is $20.
Mm-hmm.
every time you sell a book, are you getting $20 every time that book sells?
Every time I sell or every time an independent publisher does? Because
I
it's different. It's a different model.
I don't know the different models.
Yeah.
So let's
So
say that.
if you're an independent publisher, let's say you wrote a book and you put your book up on Amazon, and I say Amazon because Amazon makes it really easy, and that's where most self-published books live, regardless of their politics. You can put it up for almost nothing. You are as an ebook, and if you're doing print, you can use a print on demand service where the book isn't printed until somebody pays for it, so you don't have to come out of any money out of pocket except for setup fees. So in a situation like that, you're pocketing the majority of the money, which is why self-publishing is so desirable, because you can really recoup your investment if you then put money into marketing and getting your book out in front of people and they know that it exists. The profit is yours. If you go the traditional publishing route, which is the way that I've gone, where I work with, big publishing houses, one, the time is a lot longer. You're looking at from the time that you submit a book, like an actual finished book, to the time that it is released, usually 9 to 12 months. And then the pay model is different. So you get upfront an advance. And so it's just like what you hear like with music artists, where they get an advance when they sign their deal, and then they earn royalties hopefully eventually. You have to earn out your advance with each copy of the book that's sold. So based on whatever your deal is, you get a percentage of the price for every single copy of your book that's sold, whether it's an electronic book or it's a hard cover or a paperback. Once you've earned out whatever your advance is, then you start to get royalty checks. And so every quarter or 6 months, or however often your publisher works, they cut you a check for your percentage of all the books that have been sold since the last royalty check.
So what made you go to Howard out of Cleveland? Because I know that Ohio State's a big thing out there, and
I was never going to Ohio State.
hey, red and white.
Yeah, I know. I was never going to be Ohio State. I A couple of things. One, I knew that I needed to get away from home. I was not interested in staying in the same vicinity with my family or the same state with my family. I applied only to schools that had excellent journalism programs. That was really important to me because I already knew that that was the way that I was going. And so I was super intentional in terms of the schools that I applied to. But the difference, honestly, the thing that tipped me over is that Howard recruited me pretty heavily. The journalism program there, and they have like this honors program. It's called Annenberg, and it's dope. And I was getting calls constantly, and it made it feel like they actually wanted me to be there. And then once I went to visit, so my very first time on a plane was flying to DC to visit Howard. I ain't grow up with a lot of money. I wasn't super well resourced. We ain't go nowhere. We never went on vacations. We ain't no money. So I got to Howard and came on campus, but the day before I gone to the University of Maryland at College Park, because that was another school that had offered me a scholarship, and they still have a great program. But I remember that they sat me in the back of the room, and nobody would look me in my eye, including the Black people who I saw on campus. And I just felt very, very much like an afterthought. And then the next day, I came to campus and I came up on the yard, and it was like April, so you know what that looks like. And I just saw all these beautiful Black people everywhere, and it felt like I was home. Like it was exactly where I was meant to be. And from that moment on, there was nothing else for me. I knew that that was
Really,
where I belong. Yeah, period.
man. Back in '99. So when you get to Howard, you see all this Black excellence. I mean, were you
Yeah.
intimidated at all being
Oh
in that
yeah, hell
environment?
yeah.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah. I say that I know that Black people are not a monolith, but I also knew some very specific types of Black people from growing up in the suburbs of Cleveland, and I had never met a lot of the types of Black people that I met when I got to Howard. Um, also, I came from like I said, the suburb. I was a big fish there, and I got to Howard, and there were a lot of big fishes there. We were all, big shit where we came from. It was just so beautiful to see all the different ways that people can be intelligent, all the different ways that people interacted. I didn't know that folks dance like that. I didn't it was just like all the regional stuff. I grew up in a really, I mean, like Cleveland is Cleveland, and it's very country, which I think people don't really know. Like we all just a little bit up from down south. And it was just a different environment for me, and I was awestruck by it. Yeah.
I mean, so when you get on campus, are you thinking like, how you gonna make a mark for yourself on campus, or are you one of those folks that's like, man, I'm here, I got to get my degree so that I can get into my career later? Like, what are you thinking?
I was very, very focused on my academics. I was valedictorian of my high school. When I got there.
Valedictorian. So you had a scholarship at Howard.
Yes.
So you were
And
smart.
But that meant that all I was worried about was keeping my scholarship. Like I said, we didn't have no money. So if I didn't have a scholarship, the bitch was going back to Cleveland. So it was really important to me that I keep my grades where they needed to be. And then volunteering is just in my soul. So I volunteered with UGSA my first week at Howard. Like I immediately looked for stuff to do.
You ain't see me in none of them things, man. That's funny. So what was your GPA coming out of Howard?
4.1.
Coming out of college? I mean, coming out of Howard?
No, 3. Wait, that was in undergrad. I mean, that was high school.
Wow, that's crazy.
I was the top GPA getter in the School of Communications for my year. If there were a valedictorian, that's what we were called. So that was me. I was tied with somebody else who I hadn't ever met before, and I found out when I was walking across the stage for rehearsal for graduation.
So what did you have all A's?
I had a B+ in Spanish, conversational Spanish.
That was the only
and I got a B+ in in Econ 1.
Wow. Damn.
That was it. So it was me and somebody I hate that I don't know their name. It was somebody who I didn't know, but we were the people with the top GPAs in the School of C the year in 2003.
But NYU is known for what? Film? Like they
have a great film program, Tisch School of the Arts. So I went there because there are very few schools that have a master's in publishing, and NYU is it. And so I knew that I was planning to go to grad school 2 years after I graduated from Howard. That was always the plan. And they had an excellent program. And so that was where I was. And I was working full time. And I quickly found out once I got there that all my peers had come straight from undergrad, and like they were majority white. I had 2 Black classmates. But they were all fully supported. So they were coming from grad school, their parents were paying for apartments, they weren't working, and they were just going to school full time. I was working at Reader's Digest at the time. So my day would start at like 6:30, walking across town and getting on the train and going to upstate New York, working, coming back to the city, going to class until 10 o'clock at night, doing homework, and then starting all over again. It was not great.
You didn't get a scholarship?
Scholarships are fairly rare at the grad school level. I think I had something that paid for books, and then Reader's Digest was doing reimbursement of my tuition, but I quit before I finished. I quit Reader's Digest before I finished my degrry because I was ready to go.
Okay.
I ended up having to pay for a semester maybe on my own.
Wow, man. I didn't know that you was valedictorian of college, high school, and grad school. That is a high standard.
Not a thing I talk about that often.
I mean,
strange.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So it wasn't even a thing I was pushing for. It just kind of.
So I know you were academically focused at Howard. Where did the ambition come from when you started to look at organizations to join and take leadership positions in?
everything is really rooted in service for me. It was a big part of my upbringing that one of my reasons for being here is to serve my people and to put us all in a better position than we started in. And so, whatever ways that I could do that, that was always my goal.
So okay, so it was always a goal. So you become a Delta. Was that what year was that? That was your sophomore or junior year?
Junior year, yeah, '02.
You become a Delta. What else were you involved in on
Oh
Howard's
my
campus?
gosh.
Like things
I
that
was on
stick
this.
out.
Yeah, there was a lot. I was on the staff of the Hilltop. First I was a writer, and then I was a assistant copy chief. Um, I was chief of staff for HUSA, but before that, I did PR for the administration before that. I was an officer for Public Relations Student Society of America. That's when I was still hardcore on that PR track. I was on the homecoming steering committee.
Let me
I
guess. You were on homecoming steering committee after you became a Delta.
That is accurate. We had that locked down.
Yes. Were you on yearbook too, by chance?
No, we also had that locked down, but I didn't work on your book.
Oh, interesting.
Shout out to my
Interesting.
line sisters.
See where my tuition money went to you guys, but that's what's up.
Yeah.
Husa, so you on Husa, right?
Uh-huh.
Man, so you had all these paid positions.
No, the
But
only thing that really paid was HUSA.
I
Homecoming
thought
steering
homecoming.
committee. Homecoming pays the staff. Steering committee, we didn't get paid for that.
Okay, I thought you were one of
We
those
were just
people
we were
finessing.
advisory.
Oh,
No,
so you were just getting all the stuff for free.
I
Got it.
did. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, cool, man. So you become a Delta. At what point you like, man, I want to be a Delta?
Yeah. I write about this actually in How We Fight White Supremacy. For me, it was seeing the line before me on campus. Like, yeah, they were like bosses and they were running stuff or whatever, but what really got me was their sisterhood, like seeing how they were with each other and how they took care of each other on campus. That was just kind of something I wanted into. Like, I wanted to be doing service alongside people who I loved. And to this day, those are my best friends. My
So
line
you
sisters
saw
are
that on
everything.
campus. Okay, so you
Yeah.
saw it on campus, and because I used to go in Blackburn, I used to see all these girls lined up going to these
In the black
meetings, and
suits.
yeah, in the black suits. I used to be like, what is going on? How come I'm not
Yeah.
invited to none of these functions? You know what I mean? It's and when we talk about intimidation, it can be very intimidating trying to join one of these organizations, especially at Howard. And I'll bring this up to you because you strike me as somebody that has thoughts about a lot of stuff. What were your thoughts when you were like, man, I want to be a Delta? Obviously you got the grades and the service, but it's always that subjectivity, that goes into how people join the organization. Like, were you like you knew like, oh, they gonna pick me, or were you like a little
Oh, now
bit
you
like,
never know. I mean, I was committed to working the process. Like, there's an application process. Like, there's there is a process, and I worked it. I met people. I did the service. I met my service requirement. My grades were what they were supposed to be. I applied. I went through the process. I pledged.
yeah, you're not fair because your GPA was a 4.0. You had all this stuff going on. But I guess what advice would you give to maybe a young woman who is not so put together as you are? So like on point with academics, and service is not at their soul, and they don't, what advice would you give them? Because I do have people that come on the show and they, become Delta, aka or Zeta, whatever, but they were like, man, I was a mess. I was
Mm,
so lost. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
And somebody took me to the side. Like, what advice would you give somebody who wants to, learn more about the organization and become Greek at Howard?
Oh man, I mean, I'm so old. I don't. I mean, I think
It was
in
just 20 years ago.
general. Yeah, just. I think that we can all benefit from any type of mentorship. Like so much of who I am and the work that I do and um, my work ethic and all of that, I owe to really strong mentors from high school on up. I have women who I call my mamas to this day, who are very much still a part of my life. A couple of them who are actually my sorors now, which is really cool to get to a place of being able to call them that. A lot of them, of me being shaped, came from them. And so I would say maybe find yourself a mentor who can help you to get to, and this is bigger than pledging, right? To just have someone who can help you to uncover the parts of yourself that you want to be able to show to the world. It's hard. We can't do anything by ourselves. Yeah.
So when you graduate from Howard, you Reader's Digest, is that the job that you take right after that?
I did. I had interned with them the summer before senior year. I had moved to New York and was living there for that summer as part of this program, the American Society of Magazine Editors. This internship that only one student from every school is nominated for, and Howard School of Communications that nominated me. And so I moved to New York and I worked at Reader's Digest. And then one of the things that has always really helped is that my follow-up game is tight. Like I sent thank you notes to every single person who I encountered while I was working there, including the folks in the mailroom, the folks in the boardroom, everybody. And then I sent New Year's cards, I sent graduation announcements, and on our graduation day, I got a phone call from someone asking me to come up and interview for a job. And a couple months later, I was living in New York working at Reader's Digest.
Man, that was the worst graduation ever. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, it was tough times, but we made it.
so you leave Reader's Digest and then you go to Uptown Magazine, right?
Actually, there was overlap. While I was working at Reader's Digest, to be quite honest, I wasn't making enough money. I was an editorial assistant. I was living alone in Harlem and I was broke. And so that was really when my freelance career started. I started looking for other gigs to supplement my income. And so I actually created the research and copy editing departments at Uptown. And so then I was the chief. I ran those departments.
Wow.
And then when I got the job at Latina, which I think I was at Reader's Digest for 4 years. Then I was an editor of a section, so I like was making more money and had a lot more responsibility, and so I quit Reader's Digest and I quit Uptown so that I could focus on my main gig.
Would you consider yourself to be ambitious
Sure, yeah.
in terms of career ambition?
hmm
Would you consider yourself to be ambitious in terms of a parent?
Explain to me a little bit more about what you mean.
Like, I want to provide for my kid the things I never had.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. It's this balance of yes, giving her the things I never had, but also making sure that she understands the value of work and earning things and that things don't just appear out of thin air, right? That so we have always talked about budgets and when she wants something like she earns money by not by necessarily doing chores because you're a member of this household, but by doing things like standing up for herself in a respectful way or by having tough conversations or identifying her feelings and having conversations about them. So I think the way that my friends describe it is that I'm a very intentional parent. So it is important to me. Like the thing that honestly is the most important to me is that I give her the tools that I didn't have. Like that's where a lot of that comes up for me is to give her the emotional tools to be able to handle herself and to set boundaries and deal with people in the outside world so that she is I don't really believe in the whole teaching Black girls to be strong thing because I think it teaches us to mask our feelings and to ignore them and to not be vulnerable in spaces where we need to be, but to give her the tools to be able to move through the world in a safe way, in a smart way. Yeah.
do you feel, I mean, how do you balance those two ambitions? Because there is a level of sacrifice that has to take place. So for me,
Yeah.
like me, for example, I work, I'm an entrepreneur, my wife, she's home with our kids. And even as an entrepreneur and having both parents, I'm still
It's a lot.
it's just a lot, like you can't just fully. So I couldn't imagine being in your shoes where you are a single parent, for lack of better words, and
Yeah.
entrepreneur, right? We consider you entrepreneur, right?
Mhm.
I mean, how do you balance that? Do you ever feel like a level of guilt
Yes,
ever?
absolutely. Um, I balance it very carefully, and some days I do a good job, and some days I don't. One of the things that is a privilege for me is that I get to work from home. I have been working from home since when I got laid off. I have literally only been in an office for 1 week in that entire time. I was doing some work for Lifetime TV, and they required me to be in the office for the first week for training. This was years ago when I still lived in New York. But for that, I have been in my home. And so it does allow me to be here for her in a way that I never really had, and that I hope and sometimes feel like she doesn't appreciate. Like, I walk her to school. Well, when we were still going to school, I walked her to school every day. I picked her up from school every day. I didn't have that. I walked my own little
What
stuff
about
down to the
like
bus
what
stop
about like
every day.
mentally? So like
Yeah.
even I'll be like me. So I live, so the building where my office is, so
Hmm.
I own a storefront and I live on top, which
Oh, that's
again
dope.
is a privilege. But
Yeah.
sometimes like I'll call myself like multitasking or spending time, but then I have my laptop open. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Working on
Yeah.
stuff and then not really
Being fully
spending,
present.
yeah, not really being like
Yeah.
present.
So one of the things that so a big one is I quit my job. I felt like as much as I loved the work that I was doing and the people I did it with and the people who I did it for, I was spending so much of not just my time, but my energy every day on my job because it was so demanding mentally that I didn't have anything left for her at the end of the day. So even if I did put my laptop to the side, I was falling asleep on her because I didn't have any more fuel for me or
Hmm.
for her. So one thing is that I basically had to rebuild my consultancy because I had been spending so much time on the work at my job that I wasn't really keeping my freelance stuff. I had a couple of accounts, but it wasn't booming. So I started about this time last year. I went into overdrive and like started just like going after every client that fit and that I felt like the work would bring me joy. And then once I had gotten enough contracts that I knew that I could safely quit my job and still be able to pay bills and take care of us, I quit. And so that freed up at least some physical time, but also some mental space. And then another thing that I do is that I have hard stops. So I do not, and it's for her and it's for me because my anxiety goes crazy when I'm doing too many things and not taking enough time for myself and taking care of myself as well. So like I have a hard stop at 5:30 where I don't do client work after 5:30.
Advice. What advice do you have for the perfectionist?
Go to therapy,
The
Lord have mercy.
perfectionist that's coming to Howard at 18, who wants to get the best
Oh,
out of their Howard experience.
poor
But they
thing.
want to maintain that level of excellence
Mhm.
that they've
You
always
can be excellent without being a perfectionist, man. It's toxic. Um,
and they want to achieve in their career. And maybe they want to join some organizations along the way. What advice do you have for that 18-year-old Kenrya Rankin? What advice?
I would say find your mentor, find your crew, and find your mental health professional. I'm a huge proponent of therapy, especially for Black folks. Like we talked earlier about stress and how it, impacts us even when we don't know that it is. Having someone whose sole job as it relates to you is to help you manage that is priceless. And I wish that I had had that when I was younger. I think I would have managed stress a lot better and wouldn't have been breaking down when I got fucking B pluses in Spanish.
Mm.
Yeah.
Should have hung around with me. You would have been feeling great about yourself. you'd have been like, yo, I'd have killed for that grade. But that's what's up, man. So tell me about what you got going on right now. Some of the projects you're working on
Sure.
and things.
Yeah. So, anti-racism, powerful voices, inspiring ideas is out August 18th everywhere that you buy books. I always encourage folks to buy from Black booksellers whenever possible. There's a website called bookshop.org, which makes it super easy to buy and support local and Black booksellers online so that your money can go to circulate within our community. Also, How We Fight White Supremacy is still available everywhere. Well, some places we just went into another reprinting, which is pretty dope because people have been buying it. So that's out there. I also co-host and executive produce The Turn On, which is a podcast that uses Black erotica and romance as a jumping off point for conversations about what it means to be a Black, female identified, or non-binary person in this country. So listen to that. It's on Apple and Spotify and Google Play and all the places where you can find.
Wait, say that one again. Wait, what was that?
The show?
Black erotica.
Or what we do?
Well, yeah. Wait.
Yeah. So on every episode, my co-host Erica and I, first I read from a piece of Black erotica. We do stories that are written by Black women and non-binary folks. Yep. So I read something titulating, and then she and I have a really honest conversation about how our lives kind of interact with the work. So like we read a book in the second season that had to do with a protagonist who had gotten a divorce and was trying to trust herself. We were just talking about in dating. And we talked about what divorce was like for us and how we got back on the horse after. And so we have these really honest conversations about that. We also give tips for different things depending on, what the episode is about. We talk about like what's turning us on this week. It's a weekly show. And then on the following episode, we do an interview with
what's turning you on, like sexually?
It depends. Sometimes it can be a product that we recommend, a service, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, so for me, it's really important.
Always the quiet ones, man. You and Erica,
think that it is important.
Both quiet. At Howard, who's known y'all was the freaks in the crew the whole time.
I think it's important for us to bring our whole selves to the table. And I am a sexual being just like everybody else. And I love being able to have conversations about what that means as a Black person in this country. I think it comes into play with all the other parts of my life and makes up the whole me. So it's a lot of fun and super informative, and it's available everywhere. And our new season launches in August as well, season 3.
And you can go on like Kenrya Rankin .com and find out all this stuff, right?
Yeah, it's actually Kenrya.com. That's the benefit of having a name no one else has. Yeah, okay. No worries. So you can go to Kenrya.com and you can connect to the podcast. I do speaking engagements, which are all virtual now because coronavirus. And I sell books, and I do editorial and activist and production consulting as well. So
this segment is sponsored by www.homecoming@howard.com. Whether events, notification, or apparel, we are your one-stop shop for the ultimate alumni and friends homecoming experience. Before you leave, a little bit of Howard Jeopardy. See what you know.
Okay.
About Howard. And some rapid fire stuff. So Jeopardy, just see what you know about Howard University.
Don't
which
jack me up too
dorm
bad.
did you stay in?
Annex.
Oh, you stayed in Annex. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What year was Howard founded?
1867.
Very good, Kenrya. Very good. What is the Howard motto?
Truth and service.
Awesome. 2 for 2.
Hey.
What is the name of the body of water located closest to Howard?
Oh, shit. That reservoir thing back behind Drew. I don't know what it's called.
Hey, reservoir is good enough for me.
Oh, okay. That's all I ever called it.
What are the 4 halls in the quad?
Ooh, okay. Now I never lived there. Um, Damn. I mean, I don't know. I know I won't be able to say all 4, so I don't even want to mess it up and had a quad cast coming after me. So pass.
Pass.
I know. Bougie.
What?
Terrible.
I know Wheatley is one. Truth.
Yeah.
Fraser.
Something
Wheatley,
else.
Truth, Fraser. Anyway, what? How many Divine Nine organizations were founded at Howard?
Oh golly. 7? I don't know. I don't remember.
No.
Okay.
5.
I'm gonna look at that.
How do you spell Crampton?
Cramton. There's no P.
Oh, very good. Very good. Very good. Okay. What is the Black national anthem?
Lift every voice and sing.
Nice. Can you finish the words to this? I'm so glad I went to Howard U.
I'm so glad. And not a white school.
There you go. Okay, good job. Can you finish this sentence? Reared against the eastern sky.
Oh crap! Stands on a hilltop. Crap! Something high. I don't know. What is it?
Proudly there on Hilltop High. That's cool.
Okay, I had some of the words. It's like a remix.
Who is the president of Howard?
Wayne Frederick.
There you go. How many schools and colleges at Howard?
13.
Nice, you doing good. What? And you better get this one. What was the name of the chapel on Howard's campus?
Rankin.
Man, for the longest, I thought that was like your family. You know that?
Yo, people would ask me that all the time, and I would be like, "Not the chapel. No, it's not me."
I was like, damn, yo. I was like, that's named after,
No.
I thought that when we was at Howard, but
I'm sure we were all owned by the same people, though. So
yeah, that's
like
facts. All right, a little bit of rapid fire. You just got to give an answer, 1-word answer. U Street or Adams Morgan?
U Street all day.
Homecoming better as a student or as an alum?
Alum.
Candace Owens.
Does my face say it?
Favorite Howard moment?
Honestly, probably any Friday in the spring on a yard.
That's real.
Yeah.
Would you say that you're black first or a woman first?
You can't separate those two. I can't separate those two. I am both all the time. I don't get to just be one or the other at any time.
Yeah.
So
So what about those 53% of white women that voted for Trump?
fuck them.
Oh, man, but they can't separate.
They
can't separate, Kenrya.
They clearly did. They chose to be white over being anything else in that moment.
Okay. But Hillary started off the term super predator. But anyway,
That's real talk. Again, lesser of two evils.
Hotep.
Nigga. Too much of my time. Too much of my past.
You dated some Hoteps?
Yeah.
You seem like a Hotep magnet.
It's the hair.
It's the hair.
Yeah.
Okay.
They slide into my DMs all the time. It's
All
terrible.
the time. That's what's up.
Mm-hmm.
Howard women don't cheat.
That's a lie.
Feminism.
Womanism.
Are you a feminist?
I am a feminist in that I believe that women
I know
should have the same. Yeah, I believe that we should have the same opportunities and access and everything else that people who identify as men have. But I also think that for so long, since its creation, that feminism has worked to push out Black women and to prize the idea of being women and to try to force Black women to divorce themselves from their Blackness, which is why we have the Company and Redbook collective, where Black women got together and came up with what a vision for Black feminism looks like.
Yard Fest or tailgate?
Ooh, tailgate. I never make it up to the yard.
Yeah, after them two red cups, it's curtains.
Yeah. Man.
When did you find your voice?
I think I started to see glimmers of it the first time I got something published, which was like the 4th grade.
Biggest Howard regret?
I don't think I have any. It was I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else. It was such a blessing to be there. And
I'm just saying, biggest thing that you regret maybe not doing while you were at Howard.
I don't have any.
Okay.
It was a beautiful time, and everything that happened and didn't happen was for a reason.
Black as fuck.
Me.
So you like that show?
No.
Oh, that's what I was referring to.
Oh, yeah. I haven't watched it.
You got to start one, bench one, cut one, homecoming, freshman orientation, graduation.
Start one, bench one, cut one. Cut freshman orientation. I never did. So this is something people don't know. I never did freshman orientation, which is why it's amazing that I knew the answers to those questions.
Yeah.
I never got to take it my freshman year because I was carrying a super duper heavy course load and it just never worked out. And then they excused me from it. I'm fine.
Oh, no, I'm talking about like the first 2 weeks of being on campus.
Oh, I was talking about that class. Wasn't there a freshman orientation class?
Yeah, I took that. Yeah.
Yeah, I never took that. Oh. I mean, I'm starting homecoming because it's lit. What was it? It was graduation, and our graduation sucked. You could cut that.
Yeah, that was trash.
I'll bench freshman orientation. But we finished. I keep coming back to that. Like, it wasn't ideal. We didn't get the experience on the yard, but yeah, we did it.
It was trash. I hated every moment of it. But yeah, I mean, you just went from seeing all your people, a week before, and then it rains. You just don't see nobody again.
We was just sitting in that in the gym, like
my parents didn't see me cross. I mean, not cross, but cross the stage.
Yeah.
Like it was tough. But yeah, I made it.
And a lot of folks don't. So.
Well, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking time. We went over by a lot, but thanks for taking time out. I appreciate it. I'm definitely gonna be following you, man.
Appreciate. And anybody else that wants to follow me can follow me on social media. I'm at Kenrya, Kenrya, on all the things.
So they can slide in your DMs, hoteps.
Please don't.
Everybody can slide in them DMs. You got questions, you want to cop the book.
Believe me,
go on Amazon. I think that's great, man. I think it's great what you're doing, man. So the book that's coming out in August is the Anti-Racist, Powerful Voices, Inspiring Ideas. The one that has really risen in popularity is, How We Fight White Supremacy, a field guide to Black resistance. And then you also have the book for teens. It's like a business planning book. What's the name of that one?
It's called Started Up, something about from passion to profit.
Wow,
I got
is that what happens when you just like on point like
when
that?
You get old?
Man.
Yeah. No. It's when you get old. It's
okay.
Yes.
Thank you for joining the HU Movemaker podcast, where we highlight folks that have contributed to the Howard legacy at the highest levels. To hear more interviews or purchase merchandise, please visit www.humovemakers.com.